Imagine being betrayed by your own parent, locked in a windowless cellar for 24 years. Subjected to repeated sexual assaults by your biological father, forced to watch pornography and mimic acts, causing internal injuries. In this living hell, you give birth to 7 children, guided only by a moldy pregnancy book, cutting umbilical cords yourself. Even worse, when you beg him to save your newborn struggling to breathe, he coldly watches the child die, then disposes of the body in a furnace, scattering the ashes in the garden. This isn't a horror movie plot. This is the horrific reality of the 2008 Amstetten dungeon case that shocked the world. Today, we delve into this abyss of human depravity. August 28, 1984, Amstetten, Austria. Summer sunlight warmed a Fritzl family home, projecting an image of tranquil normality. 18-year-old Elisabeth Fritzl, the slightly rebellious middle daughter, descended into the basement at her father Joseph's request. "Elizabeth, come help me with this door." "It's too heavy," Joseph called from the dim stairwell. Elizabeth, though reluctant, felt no suspicion. The basement was familiar territory. Joseph had often tinkered down there, claiming he was reinforcing a bomb shelter. As she stepped onto the cellar floor, everything changed. There was no door to move. Instead, Joseph turned suddenly, clutching a rag soaked in ether. Before Elizabeth could cry out, it was clamped over her nose and mouth. The acrid fumes overwhelmed her senses. As consciousness faded, the last thing she saw were her father's face, twisted into something monstrously unfamiliar, and the heavy outline of a reinforced concrete door sliding shut behind a storage shelf. She awoke to blinding pain and cold metal biting into her wrists and ankles, shackled to a concrete pillar. A few dim bulbs cast weak light on a cramped, stifling space reeking of mildew and dust. She screamed, rattled her chains, called for her mother and siblings. Only suffocating silence and the echo of her own terror answered her. The door sealing her in, 60 centimeters wide, 90 centimeters high, weighing 300 kilograms, was a tombstone blocking out the world. Only Joseph knew the code. This was no ordinary cellar. It was Joseph Fritzl's meticulously constructed dungeon. Hidden behind shelves stacked with junk, the fortified door opened into a 55-square-meter labyrinth. A tiny room with a bare mattress, a squalid toilet and sink, a rudimentary kitchen corner, and a chilling soundproof room lined with thick black rubber. The ceiling, just 1.6 meters high, forced occupants to stoop. No windows, no natural light. Absolute darkness and silence reigned. The rubber room absorbed the sounds of Joseph's assaults and Elizabeth's desperate cries. Elizabeth Fritzl's 24-year descent into hell had begun. Joseph, her father, became her sole point of contact and the source of her endless agony. Every day or two, the heavy lock would clunk open. Joseph brought minimal sustenance: stale bread, water, occasionally cheap sausage or canned food. Then came his true purpose, the rape of his own daughter. He degraded her with vile insults and threatened death, cast released into the cellar if she resisted. He forced her to watch pornographic videos, demanding she imitate the acts to satisfy his depravity. Over 24 years, according to court records and Elizabeth's testimony, he raped her over 3,000 times. Amidst the squalor, malnutrition, and foul air, Elizabeth became pregnant. Her first labor came on a freezing night in 1988. Alone on the concrete floor, with only a moldy pregnancy manual, rusty scissors, and dirty towels Joseph had tossed down, she endured excruciating pain. Sweat-drenched and bleeding, she delivered twin boys, Michael and Alexander, and severed their cords herself. Michael struggled immediately, his tiny face turning blue, his breaths fading. Elizabeth, cradling her dying son, begged her father, "Please, Papa, take him to the hospital. Save him." Joseph stood impassively in the shadows. "If he dies, he dies," he stated coldly. Michael stopped breathing in his mother's arms. Joseph picked up the tiny corpse like trash and left the dungeon. Soon, black smoke rose from the backyard incinerator. Michael's body was reduced to ash and scattered in the garden. His surviving twin, Alexander, would face a different yet still horrific fate. Over the ensuing years, Elizabeth gave birth 5 more times in the dungeon. Joseph orchestrated a cruel division of their 7 children. 3 children in the light: Lisa, Monica, and Alexander. Shortly after birth, Joseph would spirit each baby upstairs to his wife, Rosemarie. He spun a web of lies. Elizabeth, he claimed, had joined a dangerous cult and abandoned the infants on their doorstep with a letter voluntarily relinquishing custody. A letter Joseph forced Elizabeth to write under duress. Exploiting an Austrian law that expunged criminal records after 15 years, he legally adopted the children as their devoted grandfather. To neighbors and the community, Joseph Fritzl was a selfless hero, raising his wayward daughter's abandoned children. He cultivated an image of patience, kindness, and hard work, winning widespread sympathy and respect. 3 children in the dark: Kirsten, Stefan, and Felix, condemned to the cellar alongside their mother. Sunlight was a myth. Their world was the cramped, stinking rooms. A small television was their only window to an outside world that seemed like science fiction. Deprived of sunlight and proper nutrition, they developed severe rickets and anemia. Their skin was ghostly pale, their bodies emaciated, their eyes wide with primal fear and numbness. Above and below ground, Joseph Fritzl lived his monstrous double life for 24 years. By day, a respectable retired engineer, doting grandfather, helpful neighbor. By night, a cellar tyrant, perpetrating atrocities on his daughter and deciding the fates of his grandchildren. Tenants occasionally complained about strange humming noises from below, or the family dog barking incessantly at the cellar door. Joseph always dismissed it. Old heating pipes, rats. Tenants, reassured by his amiable demeanor, didn't pry. No one, not even his wife Rosemary, looked behind the shelves. The meticulously crafted lies imploded on April 19th, 2008. Kirsten, the eldest daughter raised above ground, collapsed with severe kidney failure and slipped into a life-threatening coma. Rushed to a hospital in Linz, doctors discovered her condition bore signs of genetic issues stemming from inbreeding. Saving her required her biological mother's medical history. Cornered by doctors, Joseph spun another lie. Kirsten was a foundling, her mother unknown. Medical evidence rendered this implausible. Panicked, Joseph realized only the mother could salvage his story. He descended once more into the dungeon. 24 years of captivity had ravaged the 18-year-old girl. Elizabeth, now 42, was almost unrecognizable. Hair stark white, teeth missing, skin deeply wrinkled and blotched, hunched and frail, appearing decades older. Malnutrition, darkness, and psychological torture had destroyed her health. Joseph ordered her to write a return letter, claiming she'd left the cult and willingly returned home, relinquishing custody of Kirsten. Under threat of death and fear for her children, Elizabeth, her fingernails black with cellar mold, wrote the letter. On April 26, 2008, Joseph presented Elizabeth to his family, declaring their long-lost daughter had finally come home. Elizabeth's appearance, shockingly aged, physically broken, eyes radiating profound terror, instantly contradicted Joseph's story of a voluntary return. Instead of reassurance, her presence triggered immediate police suspicion. Police took Elizabeth aside. Assured of her children's safety, especially those still trapped below, the dam broke. 24 years of pent-up terror, agony, and shame erupted. Trembling and weeping, she haltingly revealed the horror behind the storage shelves and the concrete door. 24 years of imprisonment, her father's rapes, the births, Michael's death, the cruel division of her children. Police, horrified, stormed the Fritzl house. With Joseph watching pale and defeated, they moved the heavy shelves, revealing the infamous concrete door. After forceful demolition, the door yielded. An indescribable stench, mold, excrements, stale air, and despair poured out. Flashlights pierced the 24-year darkness. In the rubber room corner, officers found 3 skeletal figures: Stefan, Felix, and another child. Ghostly pale, malnourished, eyes screwed shut against the sudden light, they huddled together like frightened animals, whimpering. Their world had truly been confined to the size of a TV screen. Supported by police, Elizabeth Fritzl took her first steps out of hell. Sunlight, real sunlight, struck her face for the first time in 24 years. Blinded, she raised a thin arm to shield her eyes, swaying unsteadily. Her first words, whispered but piercingly clear to the officer beside her: "Can you promise that I will never, ever have to see him again?" The depth of fear and despair in that question silenced everyone present. On March 16, 2009, Joseph Fritzl's trial began in Linz, captivating global attention. Initially, the monster tried to hide his face with a blue folder. He admitted to imprisonment and incest, but denied murdering Michael and charges of enslavement, absurdly claiming, "I brought them a Christmas tree every year. I took care of them," painting himself as a flawed but caring father. The evidence was overwhelming. The court played Elizabeth's pre-recorded 11-hour testimony. With devastating calm, she detailed the chains, the endless rapes, the solitary agony of childbirth, the despair of holding her dying son, the incinerator flames, the children trembling in the rubber room during assaults. The account of Michael's death and cremation was particularly harrowing. The sheer brutality forced 8 jurors to withdraw due to psychological distress, replaced by alternates. Faced with his daughter's irrefutable testimony, the dungeon structure, incinerator evidence, and DNA proof, Joseph Fritzl's facade crumbled. He pleaded guilty to the primary charges: murder, enslavement, incest, rape, and unlawful imprisonment. On March 19, 2009, the court sentenced Joseph Fritzl to life imprisonment, the maximum penalty under Austrian law. Crucially, due to the extreme severity of his crimes and the permanent damage inflicted, he was declared ineligible for parole. He would die behind bars. Elizabeth and her 6 surviving children were given new identities and relocated to a secret location under state protection. They received comprehensive, lifelong psychological care and support to adapt to society and learn essential life skills. The cellar children, Kirsten, Stefan, Felix, Joseph was simply him, a terrifying source of food and violence. They witnessed or sensed his assaults on their mother. He was the only father figure in their warped world, yet biologically their father, and legally their grandfather. The cognitive dissonance was profound and agonizing. Any label, father, grandfather, him, carried unbearable weight and revulsion. The above-ground children, Lisa, Monica, Alexander, their world imploded. They had loved and revered Grandpa, the man who saved them from their irresponsible cult mother. Overnight, he became their biological father and the monster who raped and imprisoned their real mother for 24 years. The mother they'd resented was the ultimate victim, enduring hell while longing for them. They grappled with being both the monster's offspring and the victim's children, both grandchildren and siblings to their cellar siblings. The betrayal was absolute. Calling him father acknowledged the monstrous bond. Calling him grandfather mocked the devastating lie. Their identity was fractured beyond immediate repair. Joseph's wife, Rosemary, claimed ignorance of the dungeon. Regardless, Elizabeth could never forgive her mother's apparent blindness or unwillingness to investigate anomalies over the decades. Their relationship was irrevocably broken. Rosemary died years later, isolated and under public scrutiny. The Fritzl case detonated globally, provoking outrage and profound soul-searching. It triggered significant legal reforms in Austria. Abolition of the 15-year record expungement law. The loophole Joseph exploited to hide his prior rape conviction was closed. Serious criminal records are now retained permanently. Mandatory registration and inspection of cellars, basements. Authorities must now strictly register and regularly inspect such spaces to prevent their use as dungeons. Enhanced missing persons investigations. Procedures were strengthened to prevent cases like Elizabeth's initial disappearance from falling through the cracks due to insufficient diligence. In 2013, the House of Horrors was sold. Under public pressure, the new owner demolished the 55-square-meter dungeon. Heavy machinery pulverized the concrete, bricks, and rubber lining. The site was filled in and sealed under plain concrete, a physical erasure of the dark space. But while bricks and doors can be removed, the scars etched onto Elizabeth and her children, and the profound questions this case seared into the global conscience, remain indelible. It stands as a terrifying testament. Monsters can wear the most ordinary faces, and the darkest hells can fester unseen beneath the most mundane surfaces.